And now for our top story, an exciting yet solemn one. On the 18th of November, the Battle of the Somme concluded, a mere week ago. The whole battle started July the 1st, this year, 1916, the day remembered by the world as the bloodiest day that Earth has ever seen. Canada took a piece of the action, and along with her sister colonies, we've shown eager support for Great Britain and her allies. Great Britain's declaration of war on Germany was as good as our own. As Sir Wilfrid Laurier has said, it is in our duty to let Great Britain know, and to let the friends and foes of Britain know, that there is in Canada but one mind and one heart, and that all Canadians are behind their mother country. Our boys volunteered together, trained together, fought together, and died together on the plains of Picardy in northern France. Josh Bouton, on the site of the battle, has more. Josh.
I am in the village of Mametz, only miles away from what was the front line. Only 3 months ago, where I'm standing was behind enemy lines. The memories of the German troops still haunt the minds of the remaining villagers. The Battle of the Somme was originally a joint French and British operation to break through the German lines to capture the strategic location of Bapaume. But after the German offensive at Verdun, it became more of a British operation to try and relieve pressure on the French army at Verdun.
Josh, how did Canadians prepare for this battle?
At home, Canadians prepared for the Great Push. Factories spewed out shells by the thousands. Guns and supplies were arranged, and men were trained. Before the Great War, Canada only had a regular army of a little over 3,000 men. But the war would change that as volunteers funneled into camps like Valcartier near Quebec City. Within 4 days, 6,000 men had arrived. After a few weeks, that number increased to over 32,000. It takes only about 4 months to train these men battle ready, which made it pretty hasty. Soldiers practiced assembling the guns, shooting, bayoneting, and general physical conditioning. Battle strategies and survival tactics were given. At Salisbury Plains, near the famous Stonehenge, rough weather made sickness common, but our boys stayed strong. As skies cleared, excitement spread like wildfire. The best trained army, according to General Douglas Haig, was ready for the push.
Our Canadian soldiers were assembled into brigades and battalions by their hometowns and regions. Because of this, close-knit companionships were formed, and informally, each brigade was known by its region. Officers and brigade commanders were chosen from amongst our men, but the whole Canadian Expeditionary Force, otherwise known as the CEF, operated under British command and to capture British objectives. Josh, what is it like for our men in the trenches?
Well, it's a mud hole. You got sandbags on both sides to hold the structure, but everything else, just mud. Living in these trenches was extremely harsh. The rain of northern France doesn't help much with that either. You'd think that the trench was a safe place to be. You'd think being below enemy bullets would be safe. But a third of all casualties recorded so far have occurred in the trenches. Every day was a repetitive routine for soldiers in the trenches. Woke up, clean your rifle, and watch for signs of enemy attack. Then you'd eat breakfast, usually made up of stale biscuits and canned meat. Chores would then be assigned, usually something like refilling sandbags or draining the trenches. Then you get some quiet time to yourself, usually to write a letter home to your family. But one thing you never stopped doing was listening for the whistle of the shells that never seemed to stop. Even if you could avoid what the enemy threw at you, diseases like trench fever were common. Carried by the lice and rats that infested these parts of the front line, many fell victim to illnesses after only a couple of weeks in action. Brown rats, growing to be sizes of cats, were especially feared, mainly because they fed on the remains of the dead, disfiguring their corpses. Also, The rain kept soldiers' feet wet almost all the time. As a result, a lot of people got trench foot, a severely painful condition that blackened the flesh around the foot. It's a waiting game. Unlike open field wars, you pretty much just wait and defend your trench, hoping that nothing happens to you. But in wars like these, danger is never far away. Back to you, Albert.
Alright, thanks, John. And now, joining me in the studio to analyze the battle is our military expert, Mr. Jordan Oliver.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show, Albert.
Pleasure to have you on the program. So, Mr. Oliver, we've heard from Josh why the trenches were so tough to fight in and live in. But why did Somme pose to be so problematic for both sides?
The Somme battlefield posed many problems for the soldiers fighting there. Both sides are exposed to the same poor weather and wet conditions during the fall and winter months of the battle. For the advancing British and French armies, Germany's superior geological locations made attack efforts futile and hard to coordinate. At many locations, German trenches occupy the ridge surrounding a valley or long lengths of no man's land, made advancing men easy pickings for snipers and machine gunners. Haig's outdated cavalry tactics didn't help much either with this fact. Another big factor in the battle lies in the intricate and unmolested German trench system that was virtually untouched by enemies since 1914. Barbed wires were in no shortages, and the deep underground bunkers were able to withstand the Allied artillery before the battle. When the Allied advance started, the Germans were able to get out of their bunkers unscratched and man the guns.
So let's just backtrack a little. You said something about Haig's tactics?
Now let's just start off with the Somme objectives after the fighting broke out in Verdun. Now take a look again at this map. Starting up here in Serre, Beaumont-Hamel, down to Fricourt, Mametz, and Montauban, these were all British objectives, and their job was to break through these lines and get to Bapaume. For this, Haig would raise the greatest army. His plan was bold. Artillery would rain shells down for 7 days upon German lines, destroying everything. At the end of it all life will cease to exist. Troops will just walk in and take the trench.
And as we saw, that was somewhat of a mistake, paid by countless lives. With more than 60,000 casualties on the first day, that is, like, arguably one of the most significant events of the battle.
Salute to all the men for their bravery. Our sister colony of Newfoundland's regiment at Beaumont-Hamel had over 90% casualty rate on the first day of battle. Of the 800 or so men, only 68 made it out unhurt. However, perhaps even more significant was the efforts made to change the tactics. Although they were slow and rather inefficient, Britain is learning. The debut of the tanks is a prime example. The British Mark I tank was first used in September of 1916. Roughly 2 months in the battle, the tank provided an offensive weapon to go against the machine guns. Soldiers can now follow a safe path plowed through by the tanks. Although only about 20 of 150 tanks made it to the front lines, due to mechanical malfunctions, and the tanks could travel at nothing more than a walking pace, so it was an improvement to the tactics and will no doubt spawn a new era of development.
Overall, the Battle of the Somme saw over 1 million casualties. Germany, with 450,000 casualties, 164,000 of those being killed, stood for 42% of that number. Britain, close behind, suffered 416,000 casualties. The French suffered 204,000 casualties, with 50,000 of those being killed. Canada fought alongside Britain and suffered 24,000 casualties. So Jordan, whose victory is this?
Who won the battle is really undecided. The Allies broke through the German defense lines and advanced about 13 kilometers inland, but they just took way too much of a toll for it to even be worth it. The objective of the battle, capturing Bapaume, was not achieved either. The battle was a big downer for all the Allies, seeing as there were many good men lost in the 4 months it lasted. I think this is going to force all the armies to revise their tactics, especially the British, since they still fight really old-fashioned compared to the other armies. So I think after this they're going to get their act together and train better to become a better fighting nation.
So the Battle of the Somme is definitely one of the key events of our time. How do you think future generations will remember this?
Well, I think memorials will definitely be established to commemorate those who fought in Picardy. Stories will be told by the veterans to their children and grandchildren. Documents and accounts written down into the history of our time. All as a way to remember the lives sacrificed and to learn not to repeat our mistakes again. The Battle of Somme, along with this war, will serve to reach future generations and to move forward.
Mr. Oliver, you couldn't have summed that up any better. Thank you for your time today, and may we all pray for an end to this madness.
Yeah, the pleasure is all mine.
As the war lengthens, Canada and her troops are distinguishing themselves as a courageous, chivalrous, and honorable fighting nation. Gradually, we're seeing more independence from Great Britain, both on and off the battlefield. The initial excitement of the war has begun to fade, as Canadians begin to see the despairs brought along with the battles. In many cases, all the young men from one town has been wiped out, and women are forced to step up to the plate and work in factories and take on jobs that men would usually take. And has raised the question of the stereotypical woman's ability and work. So how long must this battle take? We don't know. And how many must die for this battle to end? For now, we can only give our ultimate support to the friends and families whose loved ones are overseas. And that concludes our story for tonight, and we'll catch you next time on the Frontline.